As we're talking about coaches, let's remind you of some of the first-year head coaches from last year. The carousel was pretty crazy last year. A little bit quieter, I would say, this year. So we're actually going to grade the first-year head coaches from this past season. These are the guys we're going to grade. We've got first-time head coaches and coaches who are new to their programs in the Power Four. But Smoke's not the only one doing this exercise, so let's bring on Brad Crawford to help us give some grades to some first-year head coaches. Let's start with the guys who are stepping into the role for the very first time. Sharon Moore, 8-5 season, end of the year on a 3-game win streak, including wins over Ohio State and Alabama, so I'd say the mood is pretty high in Ann Arbor right now. What's his grade?
Yeah, I gave Sharon Moore a overall B, maybe even a B plus. Emily, how many coaches in America can say that they beat Southern Cal, Ohio State, and Alabama last season? The answer is one. It's Sharon Moore. He was able to accomplish this despite the NCAA cloud post Jim Harbaugh sort of hanging over the program, coming off that national championship, and he had no quarterback and no offense the entire season. Look, I know 5 losses is more than anybody expected after that 15-0. But Michigan was able to beat a Buckeyes team that went on to run roughshod through the expanded playoff and win the championship. Michigan still has those bragging rights in that rivalry 4 consecutive years, and it did not change despite the coaching transition. So to me, Sharon Moore aced his final exam during rivalry weekend, and he got some extra credit for beating Alabama in that bowl game. So he went from a satisfactory grade to a B for me.
Certainly. I don't know if Michigan fans were expecting them to win the national championship, but beating Ohio State, yeah, that feels like a successful season for them. Elsewhere in the Big Ten, it still feels weird to say that when I talk about UCLA, but Deshaun Foster, 5-7 in year one. Smoke, what grade do you give him?
Well, I'm going to give old Smoke a C, and that's not this Smoke. That's the head coach's Smoke. And the reason why I gave him a C is just coming over and just taking over that Chip Kelly roster was depleted. And he did a really good job of just getting that program going in the right direction. But I had to give him the C just because the first hire of the coordinator with Eric Bieniemy, he struggled with. Bieniemy wanted to implement the West Coast offense, and they struggled with that. They were up and down. They lost 5 games in a row, came back and went on a 3-game winning streak. But when I look at coaches and first-year guys, whenever you have a 1-score game, I put that on the coaches. And that you have to get through those games by pulling that right string and just making maybe 1 or 2 calls to get that going. And when you looked at the Minnesota game, the SC game, I put that on Coach Foster. And I would have gave him a B if they would have won those 2 games and got to 7. And I thought that was the reason why I gave him a C.
I love it. Smoke showing his work with the grade, too, so we get a little backstory here. Brad, let's go to the SEC. Mississippi State's Jeff Lebby, 2-10 in his first season. Winless in the SEC. What's the grade?
Yeah, when you go 0-8 in conference play, you're not going to get a passing grade from me. I don't think anybody can. But I will say this. Mississippi State was competitive in a ton of games and only lost by 17 combined points to the Big 12 champion Arizona State, who made the playoff, and SEC champion Georgia. They scored 31 points between the hedges, lost that game 41-31. So there was no quit in this team. That's saying something despite that 2-10 record. Blake Shapen, quarterback, is back for another year as a senior next fall. I think in year 2 in this offensive system, that should help the passing game improve. The big thing for me with Jeff Lebby is, can he fix the defensive issues at Mississippi State? They have not had dogs on that side of the football the last couple of years in Starkville, and to be better in the SEC, MSU has to get better on defense.
We know they've had them in the past, too. We've seen it before, so we can see it again. Smoke, how about in the ACC? We've got Syracuse's Fran Brown, 10 wins in year 1 at Syracuse. What grade do you give him?
Oh, that's an easy one. A.
Love it.
Coach came in spanking with an A. And when you get an A, you have to do one thing. Got to find your quarterback. And they did with Kyle McCord. Brought him in. He had the best year of his career. And then they went down and got Fidel Diggs on the defensive side to come with him from Texas A&M, which he brought in with the defensive coordinator. But he knew him from when he recruited that guy out of the great state of New Jersey. So when you have a coach that can win 10 games, bring back that energy back into the dome, in the Orange Dome, and Coach Sweeney says, thank you again for getting that monster win to get him in the playoffs. But recruiting, energy, focus, attention to detail, players, why can't I get an A to that guy? He deserves it.
Yeah, let's keep the good times rolling here and move to guys who have been head coaches before but were in the first year in their programs with Indiana's Curt Cignetti. They made it to the playoffs. Need I say more, Brad? What grade do you give them?
Yeah, he just managed the best season in program history. So anything less than an A here would just, be bad on my part. And he did so by implementing his philosophy quickly. Indiana's not used to winning 11 games, but they did so in year one under Kirk Cinetti. The only teams the Hoosiers lost to this season both played in the national championship game. Notre Dame on the road, and they lost to Ohio State in a game that was more competitive than the final score indicated. I don't care how easy this schedule was, and I know by Big Ten standards it was favorable. Indiana took full advantage of that. Kirk Cinetti, basically with a transfer portal-laden roster. And oh, by the way, he signed Cal transfer quarterback Francisco Mendoza for 2025 as the replacement for Curtis Work. So I don't think Cignetti is going to slow down anytime soon in Bloomington.
All right. Good year one. Could also maybe be a nice follow-up in year two. Smoke, Mike Elko at Texas A&M was a win away from the SEC championship in year one. So how do you grade his first season?
So just one win away, you know what, Coach? I gave you that grand old B. Because if you would have went into that SEC championship, I would have gave you an A. But this is what you found in year one for yourself. Franchise quarterback in Marcel Reed. Marcel Reed gave you that opportunity now to say, you know what? Guys in the transfer portal, especially receivers, you have somebody to come play for. And what he also did was stabilize that program that was left by Jimbo Fisher for dead. Brought that program back. You saw guys playing with energy, tenacity, attention to detail. They struggled a little bit in the back end, but he's fixing that. So when you have a top 10 recruiting class coming in a portal and in high school, listen, good things are coming. And the ball is getting ready to roll to Texas A&M.
Yeah, you mentioned receivers wanting to come in and play with Marcel Reed. That's certainly the case. We saw the absolute haul that the Aggies brought in the transfer portal at the receiver position. Brad, let's stick in the SEC here. Kalen DeBoer, I mean, obviously had some, I say massive shoes to fill at Alabama, is putting it mildly. So what do you grade his 9-4 campaign?
At Alabama, 9 wins is not going to cut it. He gets a C for me. Look, it was smooth sailing for Kalen DeBoer after that win over Georgia in September. All of us, myself included, kind of thought Bama would be a playoff team after starting the season 3-0 with that win. And then the season derailed a bit. They went to Nashville and lost to Vanderbilt. Alabama football does not lose to Vanderbilt. And that game revealed a ton of issues defensively. And then later in the season against Oklahoma, that did not look like Alabama. A 3-touchdown loss took Bama from playoff contention to the outside looking in, and then came the flat bowl performance against Michigan, and that results in a 4-loss team. So Nick Saban lost 4 games one time in 17 years in Tuscaloosa, and that came in year one in 2007. I'm not comparing DeBoer to Nick Saban and his greatness as a college football coaching legend, but expectations have not changed, and DeBoer cannot afford another satisfactory C grade in 2025.
Kind of sounds like you are. He's doing I'm just kidding. He's doing the same thing that Nick Saban did, right? Is lower those expectations in year one and then go on to become the greatest college football coach of all time. Smoke, let's end here with the Arizona's Brent Brennan. Other big shoes to fill, too. I mean, he took over a 10-win team, only 4 wins for the Wildcats this past season. What's his grade?
I guess I got to end it on a sad note. D.
Ugh.
Closest thing to failure that you can possibly get for simply just having 2 NFL-type players with Noah Fafita and T-Mac, the receiver position. When you have that on offense, that's a 6 wins for you. And when you're playing in the Big 12 and you're getting blown out with games of 49-7 by Arizona State, 56-12 to UCF, TCU beat you 28-49, like the morale level is low. And when you cut on the tape, you don't see that same intensity that they're playing with. So in order to get a C, your team got to play hard. That's just showing up and playing football. And I didn't see that on film when I watched Arizona.
All right, so let's take a look at the final report cards from our guys here. As we heard, Brad is really impressed with what Sharon Moore did. Kurt Cignetti also in year one, but not so much with Jeff Lebby and Kalen DeBoer. That I guess passing C grade there for him, but still some room for improvement. As for Smoke, it's an A for Fran Brown, a B for Mike Elko, and a C for Deshaun Foster, and a D for Brent Brennan. You just used all the letters that were available to you, Smoke. I do appreciate that. Before we let you go, though, Brad, I want to ask, just in general, looking at all of these coaches, and we want to look ahead, right? We graded them, but now we're looking ahead. So which coach do you think makes the biggest leap in year 2 of this group?
Yeah, I'm going Sharon Moore. When you sign the top quarterback in the country, #1 overall recruit for 2025 in Bryce Underwood, as long as he's the real deal as a true freshman, and there's some spark offensively, because last season Michigan won 7 games and beat 4 ranked teams despite not having any athlete at the quarterback position. If Bryce Underwood is legit, I think Michigan could challenge for 9 or 10 wins, and I fully expect, Emily, for the Big Ten to be a 4 playoff team league once again.
Well, Coach Elko, the pressure's on you. The smoke press is on your back. I think that you have the perfect opportunity to make this jump. Looking at your schedule for next year, the 2025 schedule, you have an opportunity to go into that Texas game, end of the season, 10-1. You have a top 10 recruiting class coming out of high school, top 10 in the portal. Marcel Reed has pieces around him to explode in the passing game. Put up a lot of points. You're a defensive guy. Let's go to work and represent the SEC and get to this college football playoffs.
I love it. What's the saying? First is the worst. Second is the best. So for those 2 coaches, hoping year 2 is the time to shine. Brad, thank you so much for being here. Smoke, appreciate you giving us some grades. You can check out more of Brad Crawford's work at 247sports.com. He will look into all of these fun off-season questions that we've got to hold us over for the next few months, getting ready for the next season. You can check out all of his work at 247sports.com.